Hello friends, for today's video I wanted to do a character snapshot and then character recommendations. And so what I mean by this is that we're not going to do a deep character study where we're spending an hour doing a deep dive into a character and their psyche and anything like that, but instead a snapshot. We're taking a brief look, a brief analysis at a character and their personality, what motivates them, how they treat others, how they treat their friends. We're looking at those sorts of things. And then after that, we're looking at other characters that have some similarities and giving some recommendations based off of that. So jumping into the snapshot portion of this, Tifa is a character that I definitely overlooked when I first played Final Fantasy, and I did play Final Fantasy VII, the original, and as a kid, she just wasn't the flashiest, she wasn't the coolest, she wasn't the most mysterious, and with a younger set of eyes, I kind of had this impression that she was boring, that there wasn't a whole lot to her. And then as I got older, and I like to think matured, I gained a lot of respect for Tifa, and in general, characters like her, because she is somebody who, she is quietly powerful. She is not just powerful in the sense that she's a fighter, which she is, and her skills are awesome. So she is an awesome character. I don't know why as a kid I didn't appreciate it, but she's awesome. The fact that you have characters with swords and guns for arms, and she's just going up and punching stuff is amazing. But I don't just mean that she's physically powerful. She has such a quiet strength to her in that she doesn't need to be the flashiest. She can be open and she can be vulnerable with her emotions, how she's feeling. She can express a wide variety of emotions, and it doesn't make her weak. In fact, it shows that she is a character who can be there for others. She can protect people she cares about, and she can be motherly in a sense when she is protecting those who are younger. She can be a fantastic friend, and you can just tell that she cares so much, not just for the people in her life, but for the planet and doing what is right. And nowadays, we find so often that we really like dissecting the morally gray character and the anti-hero, and sometimes we even have villains as our main characters. And I do miss a little bit just having that character that always fights for what is right, for the things that they know deserve to be fought for. And I definitely think Tifa is that kind of character. Plus, she's just awesome. And she's somebody who, her character design is so simple, but yet so cool at the same time. I know that's not the deeper, more meaningful aspects of her, but she's amazing. She can be both quote-unquote traditionally feminine, where she has these softer features, and she's got the long hair, and she's petite, yet she packs a punch. And so in that sense, she also, it almost facilitates the overlooking of her, because she doesn't have something really flashy. She doesn't have the big weapon, and so it dares her enemies to underestimate her. I think a good way to sum up Tifa is if everybody in Final Fantasy VII, if everybody in Midgar was like Tifa, the world would be a better place. And characters like that, I just think, are fantastic. She also is somebody who a lot of her friends have endured so much, and she has as well, but she manages to process her emotions and everything that has hurt her, and she works through it. She's quiet, she's introspective, and then she also helps those around her through the trauma they've experienced as well, and she has so much patience for them. So Tifa is just a character that I think in general is worth praising, is worth not overlooking like I did as a kid. And if you love Tifa, and if you have, if you would like to praise her some more and go into more detail as to why you think she's amazing, you're welcome to do that. But if you do love this character and you're looking for other characters that have some similarities, this is where we're going to jump into some recommendations. So the first couple are going to be manga, the rest are going to be books. But when I think about characters that are awesome, quiet, powerful, supportive, I don't think there's too many other characters that fit that better than Hawkeye from Fullmetal Alchemist. So Hawkeye is very much the sharpshooter, not just literally as in that's her profession, but also that is sort of her entire personality at a glance. It's not really, you know, there's more beneath the surface, you know, there's more to her past and to her very devoted loyalty to the character Mustang, but she does sort of keep to herself. She is very silent in how she deals with things, and then also she's oftentimes the most mature person in the room. And if you don't know anything about Fullmetal Alchemist, our main characters, generally, you think of Edward and Alphonse. They're two young brothers who lost an arm and a leg when a alchemical experiment went wrong in trying to bring their mother back from the dead. And ever since this transpired, I should clarify, Edward lost an arm and a leg. His brother lost his entire body, and his soul had to be attached to a suit of armor. As a result of this horrible accident, these two brothers are now trying to restore their bodies, and that's who you usually focus on when you hear the synopsis, and if you have watched Fullmetal Alchemist, you know those are like the main characters. But then it opens up, and there's so many fantastic characters, so for that alone, I think if you're interested in Final Fantasy VII, if you like Final Fantasy VII, you might like Fullmetal Alchemist because of the great cast of characters, and there is a lot of moral ambiguity with the characters and just in general with the plot. But eventually these two main characters encounter a man named Mustang who is working within the military, and the military is very corrupt, but he's somebody who wants to work from within to dismantle that corruption. And his loyal, you could almost call her bodyguard, the person that watches his back, is our sharpshooter here. It is Hawkeye. And she is someone who you can tell there's something between her and Mustang as far as their past and why she's so loyal to him. You just don't know exactly what that reason is, and you kind of want to pick apart and figure out what's going on with the two of them. And what's great about her is that if Mustang loses his way, you know that she is going to aim her sights on him. She's always going to fight for what's right, and if that means that the person she's loyal to starts to stray from the path, she's either going to help him get back on or she's going to eliminate him. Fullmetal Alchemist does have a fantastic anime if you're interested in watching that as opposed to reading the manga. If you do want to check it out, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is the one that stays true to the story of the manga. Now for our next manga, and this one sadly does not have an anime, but the manga is worth it. One, because it's a fantastic story, but two, because the artwork is so good. It is continuously considered to be some of the best artwork in all of manga, and that would be Vagabond. If you don't know anything about Vagabond, it is a historical fiction manga that is focused on a real samurai in history, and I can't recommend it enough. It is very, very, very slow going, but its themes somewhat require that. Regardless, though, the character that we're looking at would be Atsu. So our main character is somebody who's hard-headed, who has had a certain view of how his life is meant to go based off of what's been ingrained in him since the time he was very, very young. The culture encourages physical violence and strength, and if you are strong, it is because you are physically stronger than other people, and you have to prove that. And you see that there are some characters that have broken out of this mindset and recognize that to live that way not only is harmful to you, but it's of course harmful to those around you, and it actually can hold society as a whole back. And Atsu is a character who is extremely sweet, who is extremely supportive and kind, and she is not afraid to show those emotions. She reaches across and she tries to help others. She tries to uplift them, and she's very open with her emotions. And in a world where everybody suppresses it and any kind of emotions aside from basically anger are seen as a weakness, she kind of shines as this beacon of what could be if you just allowed yourself to feel things, if you allowed yourself to look past what you've always had fed into your mind. And Atsu, from the beginning, it's kind of hinted at that she's truly the one that knows strength, but it takes so long for our characters to wrestle with these things. For so long, you're just following fight after fight, and then you're following the character on their way to the next fight. And there's some pretty great fights, so there's some great action in this as well. But it's the introspection, it's the philosophical musings that I think really set this story above and beyond. And Atsu is somebody who, while she's not physically strong the way that Tifa is, I do think that character that's sort of off to the side and overlooked for the cool character, for the strong character, for the outwardly obviously strong character. In that sense, I think Atsu and Tifa are really similar. After that, we have Sword of Kaigen, and I don't actually think Sword of Kaigen is all that similar to Vagabond, but in describing it, it might sound like there's some similarities. I promise these stories are quite different, although both are absolutely worth checking out. So in this story, we are introduced to a young man named Mamoru who believes very strongly in what he has been told his whole life about his purpose and the purpose of all of the men on the island of Kaigen. Kaigen is seen as this first defense if there is ever an invasion, and thus there is this warrior culture that is encouraged of their society. However, Mamoru starts to question things when he meets somebody who is from another place, and he starts to hear what the outside world is like, and it's very different than what he's always been taught. And when he starts asking questions, his mother, Misaki, is wanting to tell him the way of the world, essentially. She wants to tell him the truth, but to tell him the truth is very dangerous. Misaki is the character that I'm drawing the parallel to. She is one of probably the best characters in all of fantasy. And I know that's high praise, but she is truly a character that you dive so deep into why she is the way she is. Her love for her family is so incredibly strong, but also she has to battle against certain views that have been taught to her husband and that she wants to push back against, but to do so, as I said, with her son, it is very dangerous. And the price that she might have to pay if she does choose to tell him how things really are is an extremely, it's the highest price basically that you could pay. And I don't want to say too much more because Sword of Kaigen is quite an experience. It's unexpected. The action in this is also phenomenal, but Misaki is somebody who, what I was saying about Tifa, when you're reading at first you're just like, she's just there. You hear about her a little bit, but you're kind of like, what's the big deal with this character? Sounds like she had a cool past, but I don't know. And then as you're reading, you're realizing the complexity of her, the inner strength, the quiet strength, and that is what makes me want to give this parallel to Tifa. I am just, in talking about all these characters, I'm like, can there somehow be a crossover? I know that doesn't make any sense. That would never happen because it's not like they're even all from the same mediums, but I'm like, I want these characters to meet. Maybe they need to make a fighting game with just different characters from games and movies and TV shows and manga. And anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. That idea sounds cool. She's great. I can't recommend Sword of Kaigen enough. If you do start Sword of Kaigen, when it first starts, you're going to be like, what is this? Because it seems very youthful and young. The setting is not what you might expect. And then you get this flashback sequence that almost has a CW superhero feel. And you're like, what is this book? And then you'll see when the hard moments hit, you're like, oh, now I get it. Anyway, moving on. Next up is a character who, when I was first drafting up in my mind characters that remind me of Tifa, this was actually the first character that came to mind. She is lethal, she is fierce, she is quiet, she is emotionally strong, and she is pretty much always trying to manage everybody else in her group because they all can't handle, it feels like, their emotions, and that would be Inej from Six of Crows. If you're not a big reader, but you do like watching adaptations, then you might have seen this character in the Shadow and Bone adaptation on Netflix, which they canceled, darn it, which is so annoying because those actors were perfect, that show was fun, it was actually a good adaptation that the fandom was excited about, but that's neither here nor there. Inej is who we're focusing on. Inej is kind of like a ninja in a sense. So in her background, she has a lot of experience with acrobatics, and that makes her somebody who keeps to the shadows very, very well. She's very quiet on her feet, and this gets the attention of what is kind of almost like a crime lord named Kaz Brecker, and he employs her to be his eyes and ears from the dark. And she's somebody who, she obviously cares very much about Kaz. She cares very much about the other people that Kaz recruits. And in the story of Six of Crows, we're following a heist, but Inej is somebody who you dive very deep, not only into her, actually, but all the characters in the Six of Crows duology. And she is a fan favorite for a reason. She's one of those characters where Tifa, I feel like, I don't know why, I said at the beginning, I don't know why I overlooked her as a kid. I think because I was a kid, and I was like, Cloud, though, he's so cool. But Inej is cool no matter what. She's somebody you can't help but be like, man, Inej is awesome. But she's also extremely emotionally mature, and she's somebody who protects those she cares about, and she's not willing to settle for less than what she deserves. And she's also fiercely protective of those that she had in her past and she wishes to return to. And on top of all of that, she doesn't just care about those close to her and those that matter to her personally. She just cares about people. And she's gone through some horrible experiences after being separated from her family. And those experiences have not hardened her, but rather made her more willing to look further on, to look at others who have been harmed in a similar way, and she fights to protect those too. That's her dream. Moving forward, she wants to be able to do everything she can to keep people from experiencing what she experienced. She's a quiet, lethal, awesome character, and again, I need her and Tifa to meet. I need Tifa to meet all of these characters. Next up is a character who, if we're looking at the fact that Tifa is somebody who lives in the slums, who is living in an area that is not necessarily financially extremely well off, that is a aspect of Tifa's character that I haven't really touched on too much, and that really didn't come up much in the other characters, but is true of this next one, which would be Annie from Fireborne. Annie is a character that when you are first introduced to her, that is kind of the focus. You're looking at a society that used to be broken up into the peasants and the nobility. There really was very little in between, and there has been a bloody revolution that's now trying to set things right and have people earn their place based off of merit, have everybody be equal. But one, a lot of what transpired in the past still seeps into the present, and two, the current system is not necessarily perfect. It's far from it, and you're seeing its flaws and the cracks in its foundation when enemies come calling. But Annie is somebody who is one of the individuals who might become a dragon rider, and in the previous way of life, as a peasant, she would never have had this chance. So you kind of root from her from the beginning because she's the underdog. She's that character who had to fight through the worst of circumstances in life, just poverty, starvation, her family having to pay taxes that they can't afford, just the worst of things. And you're really diving into what that does to a person and how that shapes them. But then you're also looking at somebody who wants the world to be better. Similar to what I was saying about Inej, similar to Tifa, the whole focus of this video. You see a character who wants the world to be better just because that is what is right. And so she's fighting as best as she can, as best as she knows how, to make that a reality. But she's not the most boisterous. She's not loud. She's not that character that you see so often nowadays of the strong female character who is just tough and mean to everybody she comes across, and somehow that equals strength. Annie's not like that. Pretty much none of these characters are like that. They all defy that, and they show what strength can be. Another reason why Tifa's amazing, and a reason that Annie is amazing. And then somewhat opposite of Annie when it comes to their financial background and their place in a class system, but is one of those characters that is just quietly extremely powerful, would be Mustang from Red Rising. I'm specifically referring to the original trilogy. There is a continuation after that, and I'm not going to be touching on anything with that because you can read the first 3 books and then be done, and if you want to continue, you can. But the original trilogy is following a caste system, and it's broken down by color. This is science fiction, so you're looking at planets of peoples, and we're looking at a main character named Darrow, who is among one of the bottom classes known as the Reds. Darrow is literally physically weaker, smaller, and seen as less capable, less intelligent, and he is able to, through some outside influences, infiltrate the color system, we'll say, and attempt to break it down from within. In doing this, he encounters some people who are among the golds. They're the top of the class system, and he is having to battle his view of what he's always seen as the oppressor with what's right in front of him, which in some instances are people that seem like good people that aren't okay with the class system, or people that question at the very least. And in this story, Darrow is your main perspective. You're following him throughout the trilogy. So you have him as your main focus. Then you have characters like Severo, who's a fan favorite, who's off the walls, wild. He is not your conventional, typical side character. And he's somebody who everybody's like, wow, I love this character. And Darrow is very moody, and he's a little arrogant, and you root for him, but also you're frustrated with him at times. He's a flawed main character for sure. But there's just so many notable characters, and Mustang is somebody who is just quietly doing what she can to make the world a better place. And I feel like I'm on repeat here because the whole point is to find characters where there's some parallels, and thus I'm just kind of hitting a lot of the same talking points. But it's true, I think Mustang is somebody who, she's not who your eyes gravitate towards or your brain gravitates towards because it's not on a screen, but she is somebody that I think without her, I don't know what the story would be. She actually is an integral part of this, even if it isn't the character that everybody's attention is on. But regardless, I had so much fun looking at this character of Tifa, who I love, and then finding some other characters that I think are similar. I didn't mean for all of them to be women, and that wasn't a prerequisite for these recommendations. When we look at some other characters and do a similar style video for them, I will mix it up from time to time. But regardless, I would love to make this an ongoing video series, not just for Final Fantasy VII characters, but other Final Fantasy characters, and then characters from other stories that I really, really love. I would like to do this for Cloud, I'd like to do this for Aerith, and then we'll see from there. But thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.